Shalom, everyone, and welcome back to Light of the Scroll. So, I guess what I want to talk about today is for anyone who thinks that they don't deserve to be loved by God or Yeshua, or Jesus. He already loves you. So, basically, my thought that I just had is that you're saying that God or Jesus doesn't deserve to have your love because of the way you are. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? That's saying that, my mom and dad love me, but they don't deserve my love to be reciprocated to them because I'm a horrible person. If you were to ask Steve and I 15 years ago, if we were to be here today, we would have laughed in your face. I mean, and not to be condescending about anything, but it wasn't fathomable. The thought is that if we were going to follow God and Jesus in any way, we'd have to go to a church. So when we got hit with this type of walk, it was like, yes, we were searching, but we didn't know we were searching. So when we started doing all of the Levitical food laws and following the feasts and not doing Christmas and not doing Easter in the typical way, our families think we're crazy. And they kind of sort of still do. It's like, well, we don't have to do that anymore. But I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says we don't. And where people pick and choose verses. And that's where Steve and I got so irritated without even knowing it. Right? Our souls felt that there was just hypocrisy everywhere in any type of form of Christianity because of what the Bible said and what they were doing. So it pushed us away. And then it also pushed us away because, like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this in my last two podcasts, but our son, he had a friend and he'd stopped by a couple of times, and one day, Jerry was at home, and we're like, why are you home? And he's like, well, I don't have anything to do. And I'm like, you don't have anybody to hang out with? He's like, nah. And I was like, well, what about that one kid? And he's like, well, his mom said I can't hang out with him because we don't go to church. And this was before our walk. And I was like, see, this is why I don't like those people. And it's not that I didn't like those people. It's just I don't want to have anything to do with that. But in the Bible, that's not what it says to do. In the Bible, it states to love thy neighbor as yourself. And it talks about bringing in people. So the Pharisees, if you weren't Jewish, they had nothing to do with you. And that is not what Jesus was here to do. Jesus was here to look for the lost sheep. And the lost sheep were the people who knew of God or maybe didn't know of God. But the Jews, the Pharisees, the tribe of Judah, I mean, remember, there's 10 other tribes out there. Because Judah and, Benjamin, possibly, question mark, they're together. So then there's 10 other tribes out there. But the Jews, they pushed people away. So when people are like, why are you doing this? This is a Jew thing. It is not a Jew thing. Egyptians came out to the wilderness with the Jews, and then they were grafted in, and they were told to do the laws as well by Moses. It wasn't just the Jews. Now, Jesus is from the tribe of Judah, so he is a Jew. So when I'm reading these things in the Bible, and I see how Christians act, I didn't like it. So why do I want to be any part of that, right? So in the Bible, when it says, you will know them by your fruits, you will know them by their fruits, that fruit that mom had said that her kid couldn't hang out with somebody because they didn't go to church, that's, to me, is a rotten fruit. So as I read more and more into the Bible, I'm like, okay, well, that's really not how Christians are supposed to act. So, like I said, if you would have asked us 15 years ago, would we be here today? We would have laughed at you because we're like, no, we don't want any part of that. So I think without fully reading your Bible and immersing yourself in everything, you can't fully comprehend the love of Yah. And it's so amazing. All the and don't just start believing in God just so, or following Jesus and going to church just so that you can have blessings. That's not okay, because this walk is not all blessings. There's going to be hard times in our life. I mean, there's times where Steve and I are still, crying out to God and praying about just anything and everything. There's troubles that we all go through on a daily basis even. But even in church, I mean, and I'm not trying to degrade the church. This is where me growing up and me seeing people, right? I mean, even when I was in doing stuff with DHS, my kids, they have two sets of grandparents. They have because their dad, so they have two sets of grandparents on their dad's side. So their dad, his mom and dad got divorced. So then she remarried and he remarried. And this all happened before either of the kids were born. So they grew up with grandma and grandpa on this side and grandma and grandpa on this side. Well, their dad's dad, so grandpa, he remarried, and they're Christians. And when I was in this DHS stuff, there was things that she lied about or over-exaggerated about, because I believe she was afraid that Marcy wasn't going to let her see the kids if she went, thinking that I wouldn't be able to come out on the other side of this with the kids in my custody. And therefore, Marcy would be the one to win at the end. And so therefore, I believe that if she believed that if she went against Marcy, then Marcy wouldn't allow them to see the kids. And so, and I know not all Christians are this way, but this is what I've seen, and so this is what pushed me away. So we need to be very mindful about what we are doing. Are we being hypocrites in our walk? Are we saying one thing to our church friends and doing something totally the opposite with people who don't believe? That's not okay. That's being a hypocrite. Just because they're not in your circle, they don't go to your church, doesn't mean that they are any less. Nobody is any less. And it's not up to us to say that. It's up to God. And we are to love thy neighbor and love thy God with all of our heart and with all of our soul. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love your Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And in Hebrew, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And I would have never known that had I not started this walk. To even learn Hebrew, it was probably not the Hebrew that Yeshua spoke. And forgive me if that hurt your ears, but I love that. So I believe that, and I'm not trying to put myself on a higher pedestal or nothing, or boast. But for me in my house, this walk has brought me closer to God, to Yeshua, more than ever before. And it's amazing. And we have seen struggles, most definitely. Steve and I started this walk at the end of 2020, and it is September of 24. So we're almost, 4 years into this walk. And yes, we have, Abba has downloaded a lot for us compared to others in this walk. We talked to some of the people on our fellowship when we first met them, and they're like, how long you been doing this? Oh, like a year and a half. And they're like, what? It sounds like you've been here for 10 years. So it's when he opened your eyes and your heart, and it's amazing. It's a blessing. And every day as a Christian, you need to find the joy in God, in his creation, in what he does in your life. Even if you're having a bad day, there's joy somewhere. There's days when I'm like, but I just wish that I could, stay at home and homestead and do all this stuff and not have to go to work. But you know what? That's not his plan for me right now. So I just get up and I thank you. Thank you for the sheep. Thank you for the chickens. Thank you for the roof over my head. We need to thank him more every day. We need to thank him for the people that are in our lives. We need to, obviously we don't want our kids hanging out with somebody who's doing drugs, right? But to have the excuse of they don't go to church, so you can't hang out with them, like that's mind-blowing to me. And that's not what Yeshua was here to do. So when I think of what would Jesus do, Jesus went to Saturday Sabbath. And here's the thing. If you don't believe that the Sabbath is on Saturday, that's fine. The Sabbath is on Sunday. But what did Jesus do? Well, he went to the Sabbath, or he went to the temple on Sabbath. What happened when he went to the temple on Sabbath that states to do no work? And he saw all these people selling their goods and doing all this stuff. What did he do? He left and made a whip and came back and flipped tables because they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing on the Sabbath. It was all about them. So to us, the Sabbath, even though God made Sabbath for man, which means it's a day of rest, we shouldn't be sitting in church pews looking at our watch and hoping the pastor hurries up so that we can go and watch football, or hurry up and be the first ones out of the parking lot so that way we can get to the restaurant on time, so that way we don't have to wait for so long when it gets all crowded for everybody getting out of church and coming to the restaurant. So for us, Sabbath looks like us. We get up, we check up on our animals, we rest at home, and then at 10 o'clock in the morning, we go to fellowship. And we do a Bible study, and we do a potluck every Sabbath, so people bring stuff. We eat a great lunch, and then we get back together and we discuss some more stuff, and then people go home as they please, and people stay back, and we sometimes don't get home till 6, 7 o'clock at night. We got home at 5:30 this last Sabbath because we actually had to come check up on a lamb, that ram lamb that's not doing so good. And it's okay to do that because, like the Pharisees asked Yeshua, you're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. When they were eating, they picked some things off the field, right? And they ate them. They weren't storing it or collecting it and then going to can it or preserve it or whatever they did back in that time. So when Jesus said, well, if your neighbor had a donkey in the ditch, are you just going to walk by your donkey and let it and be like, sorry, it's the Sabbath, can't help you, buddy, and then hope that his donkey is still struggling in the ditch at sundown? No. So we had a ram lamb that we needed to come check on because he hasn't been doing the greatest, and we've been giving him extra vitamins. And so we came to check on him, make sure that he was doing all right, make sure that he had enough food, extra food, gave him some vitamins. That's stuff we can do. So we actually left fellowship a little bit earlier than we typically do. We don't go grocery shopping. We don't go to a restaurant. We don't go, and it's so peaceful to know that one whole day we are not worrying about any errands that we need to do. This is what we do on Saturday, and that's it. There's no cares. It's all about and our rest. So it's, like I said, some of my family, my grandma who recently passed away, I just saw her in May, which she was doing great at that time. I mean, not great, but she was up and able to get around, and talked with her and hung out with her and, for a whole week. And I was having a discussion while she was sitting at the kitchen table, regardless, that's just where she always sat. And me and my mom and my grandpa were sitting at the table as well. And we were discussing Bible stuff. And my grandma looks at me and she's like, "You're a Jesus freak." And we all started laughing, and I look at her and I said, "Good, I hope so." And she didn't. Remember, my grandma was Portuguese. So she grew up, she was a very blunt person, and sometimes that bluntness seemed cruel. Sometimes that bluntness was loving. And my grandma couldn't do anything wrong. And she wouldn't do anything wrong with me anyways, because It's just the relationship that we had. So anything that she would say would not hurt my feelings at all whatsoever. But I don't think she was saying that as a bad thing. But at the same time, like, I don't know how to explain it. And I just thought it was the most, and I it's like, wow, do you see these? And I live in Iowa and she lives in Colorado. So it's not like we hadn't seen her since, I believe it was the last time that we actually celebrated Christmas was 2019. So she hadn't seen me since 2019. And I talked to her every Sunday, call her every Sunday. But since 2019, she hadn't seen me. So her seeing me in this new thing, it's kind of like she saw the fruits of what I've been bearing, right? And she saw me as a Jesus freak. And so be it. If I'm going to be running after anybody and trying to idolize anybody, it's going to be Jesus. It's going to be Yeshua. So it was funny. It was great. And that's going to be forever one of the last comments that I remember my grandma saying to me. And it's going to give me a smile on my face every time. And I'm so glad that she got to see me that way. So I just want people to know that if you're struggling with addictions of any kind, all you got to do is ask for God to help you through that, and he'll end it for you. And then you can come back. You are worthy. He's never not loved you. So it's not like you have to earn his love back or anything like this. You can come back. Everybody's worthy of it. You can either give in to Satan or you can give in to God. When Steve got his scriptures, I can't remember how long after he got the scriptures, couple weeks, couple months, it wasn't very long after that. And we were dead asleep. And it's like the middle of I don't even know what time it was. I never even looked at the clock, but we were dead asleep. And all of a sudden I wake up and I'm laying flat on my back. And this black shadowy thing is like choking me. And at this time, I wasn't always saying Yeshua, but I was saying Jesus. And I could barely get it out. But all I said is leave in the name of Jesus. And it was done. It was gone. And I didn't roll over, but I turned my head to the left because Steve sleeps on my left side and he was just sound asleep. And I feel like at that moment, the reason why that happened to me is because Satan was mad that I had agreed as soon as Steve said that to get those scriptures. I mean, I didn't even give him a second to change his mind, and because I knew exactly where to go to order them, and I knew exactly which ones he wanted. And so, like I said in my last episode, it was like 5 minutes, bam, and you can't change your mind. But really, it was like done. And so it's almost like Satan was trying to show, I don't know exactly, but it's like he was mad that because Steve was not in a bad way. It's not that Steve was a bad person or evil or anything like that, but Steve had been so mad at God for so long and wouldn't have anything to do with him at all whatsoever. I mean, there was even times where we were like, let's follow in the way of the Vikings, right? We were going to decorate. One year we almost decorated the house for Yule. I mean, crazy. So we were so far, Steve was so far disconnected from God that it's like Satan, you know that song? I'm sure you've probably seen it on TikTok or reels on videos about the devil thought he had me, but Jesus said you were mine. That's what I think of when I think of that moment. And there hasn't been any moment like that since. There have been moments where we do question, is this a teaching from Yah? Or is this Satan trying to, hinder us and see where, I don't know. In those moments, we always praise God, praise Yah for any blessings that are in that moment. For instance, we had a huge hailstorm, baseball-sized hail, demolished the whole west side of our house. We had vinyl siding. 5 windows on that side of the house were busted out. And praise Yah, There was no roof leakage. Insurance company comes out, did an estimate on everything. We would have had to, here in the next couple of years, we would have had to start thinking about getting a new roof for the house because that was almost up. And this hailstorm, we got 3 new roofs, 5 new windows, all new siding on half the house. It all matches, but siding on, all new siding on half the house for not even the fraction of a cost of what just the roof would have costed. So the blessing is, and then also my car got totaled from the damage of the hail, but I still get my car because it still drives wonderfully. And now I don't have debt on that vehicle anymore. So there's blessings in everything. Was it like devastating because we were out to eat that day. We were at the restaurant when it hailed, and we didn't even have any idea. You couldn't tell that it was baseball sized hail looking out the window because the hail was hitting everything, right? So you couldn't tell it was baseball size. And so walking up to the house after we ate and just seeing the damage, we were like, oh, wow. But there was blessing in that because of us to get new things on that needed to get new. Abba provided. So we have to be extremely mindful on how we're treating others. And just because people don't believe like we do, or they don't believe like you do, doesn't make them any less. We just need to pray that those people, that God opens their eyes and opens their ears. We want them to have ears to hear and eyes to see. And we pray every day that these people look like, can you walk? We want them to walk the same way because this is such a freeing walk. The law, even though we follow the Levitical food laws and we do the feasts, and we are not bound at all by anything. We are more bound by governmental and state laws than we are by these books, these laws in the Bible. And we want everybody to have this release, have this freedom. And when Yeshua said, follow me, take up my cross and deny yourselves. Well, I deny myself of pork bacon. I deny myself of shrimp, of lobster. We used to love those things. Now we don't even think twice about it anymore. It's just how we are. So someone said in an interview I was watching, the laws in the Bible are not hard. Man makes them hard. So I hope this all made sense, and I hope everyone has a blessed weekend, blessed Sabbath, if that's the way you follow. Shalom, everyone. Leave a comment. Let me know how you liked this podcast. Subscribe so that you don't miss an episode.